bit of what was happening after tonight's class, because tonight is actually the last module of your formal content and context learning. After tonight, you're going to enter many different learning activity by different faculty, and you need to follow different kind of requirement and design by different faculty. So it will be the last week for me to lead the class through the 24/7 learning cycle. And therefore, I want to give you some idea about what will be happening during week 11, week 12, week 13, week 14, which is our travel to Mexico, as well as week 15, which will be the last week, and we are going to have an online final exam. Now, after I explain the activity to you, and you will find out that all these different activities are actually offered by faculty from different schools, and mostly from session A. So we have activity designed and led by Technion Israel. We have a German faculty to give a guest lecture. We also have faculty from Greece to give guest lecture. So all these things happen in session A. Now, because of time difference, and it's impossible for them to actually repeat the same activity for session B. As a result, I have to ask session B students to participate in the session A activity in different way. So I will ask for your special attention on how can you, particularly you are in session B, how can you participate in the session A activity, okay? So please pay attention to the explanation in the next slide. So this week we are now finishing the content context study, and you have already studied the pre-class material where we talk about the impact of the internet. Now this subject of internet has really been now a very important subject today. Everywhere you go now, people talk about not only how much internet has brought the good thing to the society, we also start to look at the damage or the crisis that created by the internet. So there has been a lot of rethinking about whether we have used this technology for innovation in a correct or incorrect way. And all is indicating that right now is a very important time for you to understand the big picture. What has internet impacted on your technology innovation? So far, for all the things we talk about from week 1 to week 9, we assume you are making different product in the factory. You are sending the product into the market. You are competing with different product in terms of your function, your performance, and your price. So we have not really started to talk about what will happen, what will change if you have the internet as your tool, as the platform for your innovation. And that's the focus of this week's study. And I want you to not only understand the detail of how internet can open up new opportunity, I also want you to understand the crisis that have resulted from the internet innovation. And this will be a good preparation for you to understand the following lecture by Aachen faculty as well as by the University of Paris faculty, because they are going to give you some idea about what has been happening in Industrial 4.0 as the next revolution beyond the current digital revolution. And many of the reasons that motivated people to work in the next industrial revolution is because now we are seeing the dilemma that created by the internet application in the innovation area. So this is a very important turning point. You need to understand what's the opportunity for internet-based innovation. You also need to understand what are the challenges there. As a result, people now look for a new industrial revolution and try to overcome those challenges, okay? And this is the module that you have learned and over the past few days, and you should also continue working on your team project. If you remember last week, we had a guest lecture, and Daniel came over, give us a very good idea about what will be the real opportunity for you to work with refugee crisis and to move forward your innovation project. Now, after the presentation, I have received very good feedback from most of the school. So as a result, I decided to invite Daniel come back again today. So he is now here in our classroom. And this morning, he also came back to our Session A class and had a very good interaction with our students. As well, he brought one of his field experts from Greece. And this is a person, she actually worked with the refugee camp with Daniel for many years. So they have a lot of interest in discussion. We actually received a challenge from the field expert, and she basically challenged us to solve a very real problem, which Daniel will give a presentation. Basically, he will give you a challenge as a possibility for your team to work on this. If you decided to work on these things with your teammates, and we will then be able to work with you in terms of field testing, or even if you are successful in field testing, we can then talk about getting more resources for you to possibly do deployment. So Daniel will be here to lead the discussion, and as well, and because Daniel has a long experience in the film industry, he has been very creative in producing different video, telling the story. Remember, at the end of your project, you need to put a video to summarize your result, right? This video presentation is very different from writing a technical report, because in video, you want to really tell the story. You want to tell a story from the viewer's point of view, and this is the expertise that Daniel can share with you. So in addition to explain the refugee crisis challenge, he will also spend some time to introduce, to give you some guidance on what would be the best way to tell your story about your innovation result. Okay? So this will be, so Daniel will come over here as we move into the team project area. So, as I said, this is the last week that we're going to have the formal content context module. So I want to take this opportunity to give you a sort of like give you a overview of what has happened to the way we organize the iPodia class. If you remember, when I introduced this new iPodia class, I told you this whole experiment started 7-8 years ago. So we started basically like a home cooking style, that we have several courses together. We invite our friends and come over to our house, and everybody just enjoy the dinner. Now, after a few years, we started the iPodia Alliance, and the iPodia Alliance actually operates in a different model. This model we call potluck, and if you understand the term potluck in American culture, everybody bring their own cooked food to a party, and people start to share different food. This is the model which we are operating right now. Therefore, after tonight's lecture, you're going to see faculty from different universities in the iPodia Alliance bringing their expertise and their information into the class. This is because now we are all operating like a potluck model. And certainly here, we want to emphasize the diversity of your learning resource. So we want to put different kind of activity by different faculty, rather than have different faculty to repeat the same lecture for you. So you're going to see after tonight, you're going to have a cross-cultural exercise, you're going to have a team project, you're going to have a visit, and you're going to have a special lecture to understand the research status. So this is the model we are currently now, the potluck model. And then in the long term, and we may evolve into a restaurant dining experience. In other words, if you go to the high-end restaurant, anything you want, and you can simply just call the waiter, they will come over here to serve you, right? That will be very nice. But right now, since we're running as a nonprofit consortium, so we don't have resources to do that, as a result, the service we provide, for example, the software support and all different things are not for order. So this is all the voluntary offered by different universities. So I want you to understand this model, and we are now in the second stage of this collaboration. So with this in mind, I want you to understand the background. And now I want to show you what has been the additional learning resource that being contributed by different faculty. So we have the context learning. This part is mostly from myself. So I have been leading these things over the past 10 weeks. And now in week number 13, we will have a Aachen professor come over here to introduce you many of the current research they are doing in Germany with different German company, specifically on the Internet of Things, as well as Industrial 4.0 topic. So you're going to see this contribution from Aachen. In the same week, we will also have a special lecture prepared by faculty from Greece, from University of Patras, because Greece has been an active member in many European Union research consortium. So we will have a faculty from Greece to give you an overview of what has been done in Industrial 4.0. Now, because we really cannot put two lectures into the same week, so we will have the German lecture to be a live lecture in session A, and session B, and the Greece lecture will be offered to you on the internet as a recording. So you will have a chance to actually enjoy both lectures to understand what has been done in Industrial 4.0, okay? And the next one is next week, starting from week 11, we are going to have a cross-cultural exercise. The week 12 is also a cross-cultural exercise. And we are going to have a 2 consecutive week next week. And I will give you a little bit more detail in next slide. And after class, you can look at the further detail. And this will be a cross-cultural exercise led by Professor Iritz from Technion in Israel. So this will be for week 11 and week 12. And I wanted, as I already pointed out to you, week 13 and week 11, week 12, and week 13, and the session B students can join session A live class in these weeks, okay? So you will be logging to WebEx, and you will then be able to join this. Or if you find the time is very inconvenient for you, you can always watch the video recording, okay? And so this is an explanation how do you participate in this learning activity. And then we have team project will continue, and the team project is due on December the 2nd. By that time, you need to prepare a 5-minute video story, and that's why we have Daniel come back here tonight to continue discussion with you about a refugee problem, as well as about how to prepare a video story, okay? And then the week 14 is our travel time. And I understand now, with at least with PKU, we're preparing the visa form, the invitation. So hopefully we'll get a chance to see everybody there. This is organized by faculty in UNAM in Mexico. And because this is a Pala model, so for example, if you really have different wish what you want to do in Mexico, what you should do is the faculty should contact the faculty in Mexico and to work on the details. The UAC is not, although we are the host of this party, we are not able to really dictate what's the visit program. So if you have any detail, for example, now the German students group as well as the Israel student group are working with Mexico and try to have some additional activity in their campus activity. So all these things will be handled separately by different universities who offer this opportunity. And then we have a final exam, which will be on December 12th. And this is a 24 hours open book and open anything exams. You'll have 24 hours to finish the exam online. You can look at all the material. You can do Google search, Wikipedia, whatever you do. The only requirement is you cannot and you should not talk to each other. Okay, that's the only requirement. There's no email communication. There's no working together. And this is the only thing you will not you cannot work with each other throughout the whole course, okay? So I hope everybody will respect these rules, and we will post the exam question online, and you will have a 24 hours to finish that, okay? Now, I understand that this may not be completely fair for Session B students for you to use WebEx to dial in to join Session A. And I understand, I wish I can offer live opportunity, but because of time difference and because other university involved there, it's very hard for us to work out this. So as a makeup, and I contacted faculty from Beijing, from Shanghai, from Taiwan, to offer myself to have a chance to visit your campus, to have additional opportunity to have face-to-face lecture as well as discussion with students in Session B. And so far, my plan is to visit NTU campus on December 27th, correct? Professor Liu, is it December 27th?
Yes.
I cannot hear you. He said yes, he did. Okay.
Yes.
You can hear? I cannot hear. Okay, so the answer is yes, right? Okay, so we will have the detail arranged there. So I try my best, try to make sure that Session B students can also have the enough learning opportunity. But this is the way we plan for the rest, okay? So now let me very quickly go through what you need to do to prepare for the cross-cultural exercise. The material I'm going to show you is provided by Professor Marian Iritz from Technion. So if you have any question regarding this material, and your faculty or TA should contact Technion for clarification, okay? So the first important thing is when you engage in a group exercise for cross-cultural subject, you are working with the same member as your team project. So we are not going to re-divide you into different groups. In other words, when Professor Iritz wants you to have a group activity, you will be working with the same students that you have been working with in team project. That will make the things much easier. In other words, you will have a chance to work with students not only from Session A, but also Session B. And because we want to really maximize the diversity, and this will require you to work with Session A students across large time difference. And I hope you will really take this not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to really extend your connection to students from Europe. And that will certainly be a very good learning outcome from taking this course. So if we have a week 11, so now I'm going to explain to you what you're going to do in week 11. In week 11, you will study, this is a pre-class study, you will study a paper which Professor Iritz has already provided, and we have already posted in the pre-class study area on P2P. As usual, you will study this paper and then come to the live class. Again, the live class student in Session B can join the live class either by WebEx, if you have time to do so, or you can always watch the recording video afterwards. So in live class, there are several things will happen. Professor Iritz will give a live lecture to explain to you what is the culture, what is the role of culture in teamwork. She is the expert in cross-cultural management, and she has been working with many global companies on this issue. So she will give you a short lecture. And then follow the lecture, she will explain to you a group exercise assignment. And this is the assignment you will then have to work with your group mate, which is the same as your teammates, right? And you will then work on this assignment after the week 11 class, and then you will put your result, summarize your result onto the P2P system, and you will also send the result to Technion Professor Iritz TA. Now, this, because you are working also in the same group with Team A students, so you can take advantage of the fact that you have Technion students who have worked with Professor Iris directly, and this will be your help to get the group assignment accomplished. Now, week number 12. Week number 12, before the class, you're supposed to work with group activity, right, as stated before. And for the live class, again, for the live class of week 12, because we have live discussion. So week 12 is slightly different from week 11. Week 11 is mostly lecture and explanation. Week 12 will be a live exercise that all students work together. So as much as you can, you should log into WebEx, and we will provide this detail to you so you can interact with other students as well, because you have been logging into the chat room to discuss with your teammates on team project. You can also continue to do so during the exercise. So during the live class, Professor Iris will then look at your group exercise material. She will make some comments on your result. Then she will give another short lecture about cross-cultural teamwork, and then she will present some challenge to the group, and those challenges are related to the cross-cultural dilemma. So when you work with people coming from different culture, there are misunderstandings, there are difficulties there, and she will present some cases for each group to work on, and then the group will find the answer for the discussion, and that will be week 12. Now, after week 12, and Professor Iris decided to send a few questions, very few questions. Basically, she wanted to have a survey of your understanding of the cross-cultural issue. So after week 12, you will then answer those questions online, and then you will be finishing all the the activity for the cross-cultural exercise. Okay? So again, this information is posted, and if you have any further question, you should reach out to Professor Iris in Technion, and her email as well as her TA's email, it's all included here. Okay? So the important thing is I want the Session B student to realize that you have to participate in these things virtually, right? Because we cannot offer this live class twice. So unfortunately, the time is such that the time for Session A live class will be right at the midnight to 2 o'clock in the morning. So this is really up to you, and we strongly recommend you to join this activity, because if you graduate and work with a global company, that's your life. You have to just do the work whenever it takes, okay? So if you have any question on this exercise, reach to Technion, and otherwise, I will trust that Professor Iris will be leading these things for the next 2 weeks. And then after that, week number 13 will be the special lecture. And then 14 will be the visit, and 15 will be the final exam. Okay, now I want to move to an important part of our activity tonight. I want to now give everybody a chance to continue the discussion on the refugee crisis. If you remember last time we talked about that when you want to work on innovation, you can work on the need, you can work on the wants, you can also work on different tricks to stimulate people's desire. And if you look at the most successful innovation cases in recent years, many of them actually are pushing to the top of the pyramids, right? You look at the iPhone. iPhone certainly is not a need, right? It's even beyond someone's want. iPhone is very desirable emotionally for a lot of intangible reasons. So everybody try to get into a very narrow corner. This is called innovation for the top of the pyramids. And you are making very powerful, very sophisticated product to serve the many who can afford. Now, last time we also talked about there's actually a bigger opportunity for innovation that is called innovation at the bottom of the pyramids. At the bottom of the pyramids, it's very different from the top of the pyramids. Number one, the bottom of the pyramids, the need is very clear. as long as you put yourself into the user's shoes, the need become very clear. And you don't even need to understand the lifestyle issue, which become very important at the top of the pyramid. Why? Because when you need something to eat, there's nothing called lifestyle. You just need something to eat. When you need to have a safe shelter, it's nothing to do with lifestyle. You just have to save shelter. So if you're focusing on the bottom of the pyramids, the need become much more tangible as long as you're able to embrace yourself into the real situation. And the second important thing is, because those needs are quite basic, often you will find out once you identify this good problem, this opportunity, the solution which you need to provide to address those needs doesn't have to be very sophisticated. In other words, you don't need to reinvent another semiconductor, another new material to really solve these basic needs. In other words, your creativity, your innovativeness in the bottom of the pyramids are mostly in the way you find the real problem. So at the bottom of the pyramids, the best innovation is a very simple solution which can solve a problem with a very big impact. In other words, if you're focusing on the bottom of the innovation pyramids, your success should not be judged by the specification of your solution. Rather, it should be judged by how big the impact your solution can be, how easy it is for people to accept your solution. So this is very different from at the top of the pyramids, where your solution will have to be competitive in performance, in different feature, and you have to end up being price competition. This is not an issue for the bottom of the pyramid. Now, as I said last time, as Daniel explained it to you, all the problem you see in the refugee world is at the bottom of the pyramid. And that's why we want you to have the opportunity to exercise your innovative ability to work on this kind of problem, okay? So you need to immerse yourself. Those are the things we talk about. So here, I wanted to get Daniel come over here. But before he presents you the challenge, which is the specific challenge provided by the field expert, I want to first tell you that the specific challenge we provide to you is just an option. You are certainly free to choose any other problem to work on as long as it relates to the refugee crisis. So what Daniel is going to present to you is just an option, okay? But if you decided to work on this challenge, there are several additional things we can help. We can provide you opportunity for field tests. We can also, if successful, we can also get resources for the possible deployment. Those are the things we can do because the challenge that Daniel is going to present to you is a real problem that is happening as we speak. So there are very good opportunity to test it and deploy it, okay? And as I told you earlier, at the end, Daniel will also tell you how to tell your story. Because this is his expertise, and there's a lot of very interesting experience that he can share with you, okay? So with this, let me give the floor to Daniel. You already met him last week, so we'll skip the introduction for him to come over to explain to you the challenge problem. You ready? Okay, you have a, I'm sorry? Over here, right here. 1 second, Daniel need to update this, you need a USB or what? Oh, okay. Give us 1 second. Well, how about we just use the USB? Oh, okay. Okay, we don't have to buy that. No, yeah. Okay.
Verification.
Yeah, which is the top of the pyramid.
Top of the pyramid here is working now.
Two-step
Two-step verification. All right. Okay.
But first,
I'm going to talk about the calendar.
okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So, hello everybody.
Hello everybody.
You can hear me?
I think you can hear me. Can everybody hear me?
People can hear me?
People can hear me.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
So, the challenge. I'm going to talk about the challenge, and then we're going to talk about elements of storytelling, digital storytelling, and also
just a little bit of brief difference between storytelling and story living, which is a new concept in storytelling and the idea of story.
So in Lesbos, on the island of Lesbos, we have two camps. Last week there are two camps. One is managed by the local municipality. The other one is managed by the federal government, namely the Ministry of Interior and Ministry of Migration. In Moria, there are about 13,000 people in the camp itself, and there are an additional 7,000 people outside of the camp that are in makeshift camps. Remember that the camp was built to house 2,000 people. So you can imagine 13,000 people that are living in, some of them for as long as 2 years, in a camp that's built for 2,000 people. And what happens often, there are a lot of man-made and natural disasters. One of those being floods. We have fires. 2 weeks ago, there was a fire in the camp where they had a unit of container homes that were basically kind of sandwiched over each other. They burned, and a mother and 2 children lost their lives in that fire. And there was an immediate evacuation. They tried to evacuate the camp because the fire was spreading, so they could fight the fire. And it was a disaster. People were basically running towards the flames. They had to control the crowd. They had to bring in basically police and riot gear. And imagine in the middle of a fire. Now you have police with riot gear, and they have to throw pepper spray at people and to control the crowd because people are getting out of hand, and there's a riot in the middle of a fire. So you have all of these factors that are happening inside this refugee camp, 20,000 people, and there is nothing in place. There is no evacuation plan. There is no map. There is no alert system that gives people an alert in the case of a fire. There is no way for people to be notified on their phone, for example, or anything like that. So imagine all of the systems that you have in place. For example, the classroom that you're in right now. You have a fire sprinkler, maybe. You have an alarm. If a fire were to erupt in your classroom right now, you would have a way to get out of the building. And here, often we do fire drills where we, practice what to do in the case of an emergency response. So imagine that in this camp there is absolutely nothing in place. There's no evacuation plan in place. There is no emergency response plan. There's not even an actual accurate map of the camp itself. And that being because the camp is always changing, so it's always expanding. So whatever map they come up with, let's say this week, next week it's a different map because the camp changes drastically. So the challenge is this for the team. Can you think of creating an emergency evacuation plan or an emergency response plan? Or I don't even want to couch it in those terms of like an emergency evacuation plan in the classical sense, because you may need to come up with an innovative way to get people to evacuate in case of an emergency. But just basically imagine that you have either a man-made disaster or a natural disaster. Let's say you have a riot. How do you get people out of the camp? And not just out of the camp, but now you have an island, so they can't just go. You can't just be moving 20,000 people now into the city or the neighborhood. So what I'm going to do is, not tonight, but over the weekend, we will share with you a 2-page brief that describes the challenge. We also are going to give you some resources, like to access a map and any open data that's available about the layout of the camp. When I was there last 2 weeks, I took some drone footage, so you can see aerial footage, what the camp looks like right now. And I'm going to share that with you. Obviously, the data that I'm sharing with you is very confidential, so it's just for the use in this class, for the exercises. And then the great thing about this challenge is if you end up deciding to try something like this, is that we can then present it to a group of stakeholders that would very much like to see your ideas and evaluate your ideas. And that includes a team of experts from the University of Athens emergency response team. They train, they have a training program that's where they train the military, they train emergency response staff like firefighters, the medical staff to respond to emergency situations. So they have a multi-agency training program where they teach agencies to come together. And this plan would really be very useful to them because when something happens, because we've seen it happen, when something happens, they could be using your plan to evacuate people and save people's lives. So this is something that could actually have a major impact in people's lives and actually save people's lives if you do it correctly. And again, it doesn't have to be anything super sophisticated. One idea that we discussed was like just a way to maybe alert people on a phone, or maybe you can look at the map of the camp and you can figure out where the exits would be, or how to, what kind of signs. Remember that there are many different languages spoken in the camp, so you would have to research and see that there are people who cannot even communicate with each other because they don't understand each other's language. So you'd have to figure out like what languages those warnings would be in place, and so it's just something that it's a really interesting and challenging problem, and it is something that is very much needed. And it's needed now. It's not like something that maybe would be nice to have. It's something that the camp management and the authorities would absolutely love to get their hands on. The question is, why doesn't it exist? I mean, if you think about it, right, the natural question would be, why doesn't the government think about these things? Or why didn't they? Or how come they don't have it in place? Well, the answer is that they have something in place that was built for a camp that houses 2,000 people. And since then, and I know I can tell you this from going there, the people are very reactive, so they're overwhelmed. I mean, when you are dealing in a situation where you have hundreds of new arrivals every day, all of your resources are dedicated to responding to the crisis. Like, imagine having a wound and it keeps bleeding. Your instinct is to stop the bleeding. And you don't have time to stop and think about, what do I do to create, for example, a robust alert system or medical or emergency response plan. You don't have the luxury of even sitting down with your staff and coming up with a plan. So that's one reason. Now, we have a question over here. Yeah.
What was the solution that they came up with that was good for 2,000 people but didn't scale to however many people there are now?
So no, the 2,000 person solution was that people would be living in these containers, and there was there was like a very clear path to get out. But imagine that whoever plans the camp plans housing units and containers, and now in between those housing units and containers, there are like multiple tents and other structures that were built by refugees themselves. So there is a lot of, it's a nightmare. If you were the fire marshal, let's say, in the city of Los Angeles, and you would go there, you would immediately shut the place down and evacuate everyone out. It's not just a fire danger. You have to imagine that people are tapping into the electrical wires. They're opening the wires to give themselves electricity in a way that's completely out of control. So imagine going into camp and seeing above your head just wires running from places like trees, from poles, from whatever you can see. You have electrical wires, spaghetti wires basically running around, and that's because everybody is tapping into the electrical power line to get electricity. So there are a lot of dangers, hazards. I don't want you to think about, how do I solve the electrical problem or a high infrastructure problem. This is something that you as a student in your campus can actually just doing some basic research, looking at, for example, an aerial view of the camp, can figure out. There was a really elegant solution that you were talking about this morning, which I think would be nice.
Let me add a little bit here, because I'm not an expert on this problem, but this morning when listening Daniel's talk as well as the expert talk, and it become clear to me this is a very interesting problem about emergency evacuation, which is not an old problem. It's not a new problem. We all have that. If you look around your building, everywhere you have exit signs. Right? So whenever something happens, you follow that sign, you will be going out, you'll be safe. Correct? But you see, that has a very major assumption. That is, the whole infrastructure remains the same. This is not the case in the refugee camp. Right? So you have 20,000 people there, and they have a plan. But now you have way more people over there. Everybody put their own tent in different places there. It's almost like you have a huge building. When you first build it, you have all the exit signs, everything's fine, and people start to put all their stuff in different exits, different places there. So it becomes really a very difficult terrain for you to maneuver to get out of into the safe area. And also, a lot of times during this very tense situation, like under the fire, people can only respond to a little bit information surrounding them. They don't have the global information, right? And for students in California, you probably remember just a couple months ago, we have this Paradise Fire, right? The people actually get burned to death. You say, how could that happen? I mean, it's not in a big building. It's in a wide. It's actually a small town near the forest, right? How could people get burned to death? I mean, why can't they just run? But you know what happened? A lot of people actually run into the fire. Why? Because when you have smoke around you there, you have no idea where is actually the fire come from. You have to make a judgment that you follow other people, and most people die because they run into fire. So actually, this morning, then suddenly reminded me that the fire department in that city, now they have to rebuild, actually sent out a challenge to the high school there. They say, okay, now we have this situation, we see people die because they don't know where to run to. What's your solution? One of the high school kids, she's very smart. She said, well, if we just spend $50 to buy this very simple drone, right? So the fire department will have a drone that whenever you have this very confusing situation, you send a drone to the sky, immediately you can tell at least where's the fire, right? Where are the people running into become a traffic jam? And then you can immediately know what's the best way to escape from the fire rather than run into the fire. It only takes a very simple device, that everywhere you can even go to toy store to buy one. So that becomes a very interesting solution. So the problem here, Daniel presents you the challenge. A lot of the problem is about emergency evacuation, but the surrounding is very different. It is a very disorganized environment, and you have no clear map there. You have to rely on different way of communicating, and people have difficulty to even talk to each other during the normal times. And so a lot of sign has to be created right on the site. So there's a lot of very interesting opportunity I want you to think of. Okay?
Yeah, and earlier this morning, we had one student from Germany ask us, well, what would be the innovation, or what would be, in a solution like this, what would be, what's the complexity? Because often, where's the high tech in all of this? An idea, Professor Lester has told you about this. You don't start from complexity.
You start from something simple,
And then
it moves up to something more complex. But oftentimes you start immediately thinking, oh,
how to make it more complex? Because we think, oh, the more high tech it is, the better it will be. Or we want to are in love with something that is high tech solution. Sexy, or we love high tech solutions, obviously. But
there could be a simple solution here. You can think of something simple, elegant, where you can do
a lot of good
with something simple. So if there's any questions, I would love to answer any questions that you have about this specific challenge.
if
If anybody has any questions. Yeah.
But if
But if anybody wants to clarify anything, I'd be happy to answer. Yes.
So to clearly define the problem we're trying to solve, it would be to evacuate these people, right?
Yeah.
Or
you can say, well, the problem is, let's say one of the problems is evacuating people. But there's also the problem of alerting people in the face of an emergency. What's the best system for that? If you have a constantly changing environment, if let's say that you put a sign in front of a gate last week that says exit, but now the door is gone, the sign and the door is somewhere else. You know what I mean? So how do you maintain in a chaotic environment like that a plan that alerts people in a time of emergency and also can evacuate people in case of a fire,
in case of an
earthquake,
a flood,
a riot,
for example.
I mean, Professor
Lu mentioned the drone example, right? So is there something that could give people
an image in real time, or is there, what can it be? Can it be a device that people get once they come into the camp? Something that is on, like
maybe like a watch or something,
or a pager or something. What is it? If you're interested in like a device
kind of situation,
you can do that as well.
There's a question in
Taiwan.
Yes. There's a question there. You can see the hand up. Yeah.
I was wondering whether you have internet or cell phone service in the camp, just to verify the solutions that need to be done.
Yeah. So every surprisingly, everybody has a cell phone. Yes, everybody has a cell phone. It's not like actually when people flee war. And they they're running away. The first thing they take is their phone, and sometimes on their phone they have everything, including their birth certificate. Or, they take people who are able to plan more. Obviously take important documents with them. But their phone is ubiquitous; it's everywhere. Now, in terms of cell phone service, that's another question, because you have 20,000 people in one area. I mean, have you ever been to a concert and you tried to go on your phone? just 1,000 people will already jam the network.
you know?
So you have very, very unreliable cell phone service. Also, remember that refugees receive, some of them who actually don't, the only ones who have received refugee status. So it's important to remember that you only have this resource when you receive refugee status. They get €96 per month from the European Union through UNHCR, and they get the card that's given, kind of like an ATM card. And they can, and typically what they do is they use a lot of that money to buy data, to buy cell phone data. So obviously, those of you who have a phone know that, €96 or say $100, but they're not going to spend it all. But $20 or €20 doesn't get you very far in terms of data. But that's what they have. So yes, they do have cell phones, but the Wi-Fi is very bad. Right.
Yeah.
Question here?
Last week you had mentioned that it gets pretty cold there, so I was wondering if you could speak to the other natural elements that you might encounter while being in one of these camps, such as like flooding or something like that.
Yeah, flooding is a big one, because the camp is on a slope, and just imagine tents. People are living in tents, and makeshift huts, and makeshift tents. When rain comes, it's not, I'm trying to make you understand, it's not just a Lesbos problem, a Moria problem in Greece. Any European camps, people are sleeping on tents. When the floods come, it washes the tents away. There have been people that have died in the flood. Like that. So flooding is a major issue. Fires, because they start fires outside of the tent. So whenever you have a lot of people, fire spreads quickly. Frostbite and cold weather. In the wintertime, for example, in Greece, they sometimes have snow there for 3 months. A lot of people freeze. And tents are just regular tents. They're not insulated very well, so when snow accumulates on the tent, it's basically like you're sleeping in an icebox. But not a very good, not an easy kind of situation. You are literally freezing, like you're sleeping in a freezer. So a lot of personal belongings. I see your question there, Taiwan. Let me.
Ask about the specific problem. Actually, there are lots of countries they are in, and then there are many different camps. And I believe that depends on the country and depends on the camp. They have different situations. Do you prefer we first focus on the specific places in a specific country, or we just more focus on like a general problem, and we try to make a general solution, or like we make a really like specific small solution for that specific small problem?
That's a very good question. Professor Liu is telling me that he wants you guys to focus on something general. Ideally, a solution that is tested and validated in a camp can then be modified and
Well, good question, but as I said earlier, you are not required to work on the specific problem described by us. You are required to work on a refugee problem which is real, has a real impact. But if you choose to work on this problem, we will then have the opportunity to do field testing and possible deployment. That's the only difference. I also believe what Daniel said is true, that if you start with some generic problem, and that generic problem should be applicable to multiple places with some modification. So, for example, he talked about a terrain. It's a very steepy terrain, has a high slope. That may not be the case, right? And in some other refugee camp, maybe the problem is not about cold, but rather it's about heat, right? So the real issue is not about the temperature, the certain degree of sub-zero temperature. It's about how do you keep this environmental control problem, right? The temperature regulation problem. So I want you to have certain specific information from the case we presented to you. But I don't want you to stuck into the problem-solving mode. You remember I earlier explained to you, as an innovator, you should never put you as a problem-solving mode. You should really try to exercise your ability to do abstract thinking, to generalize the problem, then the impact of your solution will be much bigger. Okay?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get stuck on defining problems in a way that they never get to build anything. They're always thinking about are they solving the right problem? How many other problems are there? What is the problem that's tied to another problem? So they tend to overanalyze the problem and they never start working on solutions. When you start working on a solution, what we're telling you is we have a validated problem already. So that if we stuck with the word work, so you don't have to go out in the field and try to figure out what the problems are. I'm telling you what a problem is that is validated, that there's a real need, and also this pathway to implementation, which is something that you don't always get because you end up working on theoretical solutions, but never get to test them in the field. So yeah, there are some validated problems. Yeah. We have another question here.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
For one, what is the access to electricity like? Because you said people were using like makeshift methods to access electricity. Yeah. But everyone has phones. And also, what is the staffing of the camp like? As far as like, what do the staff that works there have access to? And what is the like access to getting more staff, if that's an option?
Right. Okay, so 20,000 person camp, you can think of as a university campus almost, right? I mean, how many students are here? 40,000. They're not here at once, right? But let's, we have 40,000 students enrolled, and we have 44,000 staff. So you can imagine like the kind of operation we have here at a university. Now you're talking about 20,000 people in one area. They're there, and they need to be fed. They need shelter. They need water. They need supplies, basic supplies. On top of that, you have various things, healthcare. But in Moria camp, for example, camp of 20,000 people, there are about 200 staff in the entire camp that are not around the clock. They basically have services that they offer, like for example, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay. And then they have support staff from NGOs. So you have about 30 NGOs that are active, and each NGO has roughly about 10 to 12 volunteers that are on site in different shifts. But they're overnight, the camp is asleep, and they have security personnel, but not basic service. They have like maybe the medical there. Deal with medical emergencies, but other than that, very limited staff. So, I mean, the ratio is like one volunteer for I don't know, 100 or 200 people, something like that. The electricity situation, what I just mentioned, that there is no electricity, for example, outside of the camp itself. So when people, what they're doing is tapping into electrical wires and trying to feed electricity into the tents, or there are even little communities that are being created inside the tent city. You have, for example, people from the Congo that are creating their own little communities. You have people from various different religions, for example, creating their own different communities. Yeah, solar panels can be used. There's always some people, and some have tried. What the problem is with solar panels is that they're often destroyed and stolen. So people take them and use them and sell them for money because they're desperate. So maybe there's a way to do solar panels that is that doesn't safe, that keeps the solar panels safe, or hard to steal, I guess. But electricity seems to be like steal your electricity. That's how. No. Like if you can steal it, then so you have to find the wires and then try to steal it and hope you don't get electrocuted. Yeah, and then they create these power hubs where people go and power their phones, and there's long lines of people just sitting in line to plug in their phones. Some people walk into the city, about 7 kilometers away. They walk into the city, charge their phone, and come back. Yeah. So there is a need for that as well. The water is good, actually. The drinking water is not bad in the camp. But people are afraid to drink it because they think that it makes them sick. Some people say that it makes them lose their hair, like they gave it to kids and the kids got sick and their hair fell off, they say. So people are afraid of drinking the water, and they only use it mainly for washing. Even though it is drinkable. Now, and also the military supplies the camp with food. So they give them water in water bottles, and they give them food in little kind of like airplane food containers. You know what I'm talking about. Each person gets that. So breakfast, for example, they get a banana. If you're pregnant, you get a piece of cheese as well. And then apple. That's for breakfast. A banana, an apple, and a piece of cheese if you're pregnant. For lunch, they get the food is terrible. I tasted it myself this week, but basically military food is like soldiers go to war. Like that kind of food, that you eat in the trenches. So it's not very nutritious. It's not a lot of people end up throwing it away, or they use the money they get from UNHCR, buy some like rice, they mix it in with the rice, or they mix it in with the potatoes. Some people have started kind of plant their own food if they can. They also go to the local farmers and they buy produce directly from the farmer. And then they come back. But not everybody has access to those kind of resources. So a lot of people end up just relying on whatever the camp food is. Oh, this is a big one. So the question Professor Liu asked, how about personal safety issues? But safety is a big problem, not just in Camp Green, but it's a big problem in camps everywhere. So some camps, for example, the camps in Lebanon, they have camps that are self-managed now, where the government no longer has control of the camp. They maybe set it up, but things got the camp got so big and so out of hand that now it's like self-controlled by the people, They created their own government system. And for example, in Lebanon, you have Hezbollah, you have Al-Qaeda, you have ISIS, you have a lot of terrorist organizations that are basically running the camp, and they run different pockets. So security is a major concern, obviously, in those kind of situations, because you have people that are enemies. You can't go in one side of the camp. Security for women is certainly a big issue because a lot of women get raped in camp. They get raped while they're taking a shower. So there's no safe for women anywhere there. They've created some safe spaces for women to go. But the rape cases are something that you can read about on the news. I mean, you can just look up information about safety. Children as well. There's not enough security personnel to ensure security for everybody. So it's kind of like everybody takes sometimes justice into their own hands. Some people just to protect themselves, they go and buy knives or any kind of like weaponry they can have to protect themselves in case they get robbed or in case of an intruder. It's really sad, when you think about it, that you're in the place with so many people around, but still there's danger of something could happen to you. And there are a lot of riots that happen, fights that break out. A lot of people are dealing with mental health issues living in the camp. And every time there's a notice of deportation, so some people, for example, they're waiting in the camp to get papers. And some of them end up getting deported back to Turkey, let's say, or Greece, or back to their country of origin because their case does not succeed in the asylum application, and they may get a deportation notice. When that happens, there's almost always a fight. There's almost always a riot that breaks out just from that alone. So security is a major concern. There could be solutions where like for example, let's say you wanted to help young girls and women in the camp to have some kind of security measures to be able to protect themselves against an attack. How do you do that? That's a problem. It's a real problem. Any other questions? These are all very good questions. We move to the digital storytelling. We move to the we can move to the fun part. Again, I'm available if you guys want to talk more or ask questions. Please reach out to me. And if you want to connect with, you also want to connect with refugees. You want to talk to a refugee if you've never spoken to a refugee in your life. You don't know what life is like. You want to connect? I can connect you to some refugees and you can interview them and speak to them. So that may help you understand life in camp. Or just the journey of a refugee. So let's shift a little bit right now. I'm going to talk about the 7 elements of digital storytelling. So before I go into this, can I ask you guys, what is storytelling to you? When you think of storytelling and story, what do you think of? Yeah, you can say it. I'll tell them. Conveying a sequence of events with one answer. Interesting. I like the word sequence. And the word event. It's good. There are events that happen in a story, obviously. Events make up a story. How about students from Peking University? I haven't heard from you.
Can you tell me what you
think of a story or storytelling? What do you understand?
by it?
What is a story?
I don't see storytelling as conveying a sequence of events. I also see it as a way to attach.
You cut out because I can't hear you anymore. Is she speaking?
I also see it as a way to attach a level of personal significance to facts. So, you provide your perspective to a sequence of facts and let others step into your position to see what you see.
I really like what you said about let others be in your position
to see what you see.
That's a very good insight. Story, I mean, talk about stories in abstract terms. Basically, a story is the currency of the way of communication, the way we connect with each other, the way we tie the beginning to the end. It is the reason it's both of you actually use the word sequence. It's interesting that you use that word because you have to have a story has a beginning, has an end, it has a middle too, happens in the middle part of any story. But generally speaking, structure of the story rather than a poem, let's say, or just a general communication, general discourse. In a story, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it moves in what is called a dramatic arc. A dramatic arc. And you're trying to answer a dramatic question. A story has drama. You know, even comedy, the best comedy that you've watched, that you've enjoyed, at their core, it's about the human drama, actually. It's about what makes something funnier than anything is watch people go through a lot of drama, but act in a very, funny way. That's what comedy is. Comedy, if you want to do real comedy, increase drama, increase the stage. So I'm going to talk about the 7 elements of digital storytelling, and that's a very specific form of storytelling that is meant for digital consumption. So I'm not going to tell you how to go make a movie to put it on big screen, or a movie for Netflix, or something like that, or some digital platform that is where movies or documentaries are, but something that you can put on for public consumption on a platform like YouTube or Facebook or something that you can share with others. Digital stories are basically short multimedia movies. I mean, you're doing something that's 5 minutes long. I would say try to do it less than 5 minutes. You can get it at 4 minutes, that's even better. But basically, what you're going to do is combine photos, videos, animation, sound, music, text, and often a narrative voice. A digital story for the purpose of this course, so it's document the process in a way that you can share your work with the world. And share your work with the others. It's actually, I think, for this class, if you tell your story, it helps you to make sense of what you just went through. You hear all these lectures, you read the material, and we hope that you will remember a lot of it. But chances are that you will forget a lot of what we teach you. But the stories that you tell each other and the way you document your own process, you'll always remember. It's a learning exercise more than anything for you to remember what you learned. The story has, now go into the elements. The story has, first of all, a point of view. So you need a point of view. What is the point of the story? Who am I telling the story to? My audience. Why am I telling the story now? Why is the story important now? And why am I telling it? and then the value of your own personal experience. And that's what makes the point of view. Your unique point of view. So, for example, how are they going to actually make the story? Are they making it a team? So, someone on your team is going to be the director or something, and they're going to have, they're going to shoot footage. So, I think what will be nice is if, for example, the people in Taiwan or Peking or Aachen and Israel, everywhere, they can use footage of their own process, right? They can shoot like iPhone. You don't need super fancy camera equipment, though if you have super fancy camera equipment, go ahead and use it. But this iPhone here, you know, the camera is good enough to actually make a movie with. So document your process. Document your process and tell the story from your point of view. Again, the story has to have a dramatic question. It should be answered. What the conflict is. So if you're telling the story of the fires in Moria, the refugee camp, and people that they need to be evacuated, and you look at the news footage, there's obviously plenty of news footage out there. You can go on YouTube and you can see boats arriving, and for the purpose of this exercise and for your digital story, you can use that footage to tell your story, use clippings, and whatever you can to show, for example, the conflict. Your problem is the conflict. Whatever problem is that you're trying to solve, that's the conflict. If you're trying to solve women getting assaulted in camp, that's the conflict. Maybe you want to show women in camp. But a dramatic question has to be answered as part of a story. These are some examples of dramatic questions. You know, will boy meet girl? That's a dramatic question. Will Iron Man get the Infinity Stones and defeat Thanos? Will you pass your exam? Will your solution work? Will we make it? Will we come up with a plan? The question may be obvious or subtle, and may not be resolved by the end. Meaning that it's okay if the dramatic question is not. It's okay if by the end the boy does not meet the girl, or the boy meets the girl but thinks that's not the girl that he thought she would be, and then it goes back to the beginning. The story needs emotional content. The only way that people connect with the story that you're telling is if they're connecting with the emotions that you're telling. And whatever those emotions may be, they can be, fear, humor, desire, lessons learned, and redemption. But just remember that emotion enhances knowledge and understanding. So, as human beings, we connect to emotional content, not just imagery or anything idea. So it's not enough that you put imagery up there, it looks cool. It has to have emotional context. It has to make somebody feel something. If you don't feel anything, it's not going to change you. You're not going to connect. Voice. Share your voice with the world. Give us something deeper than what written words imply. A lot of people, this is the most uncomfortable thing, I think, whenever I have students make their own stories or make their own videos. One thing that people are always afraid of is not necessarily to show up in front of a camera, but to speak. People don't like the sound of their own voice. But we're going to ask you to get uncomfortable and to speak your own voice and to think about what you want to say. That sometimes it may help you if you write things down, if you want to write down what you say, or if you want to narrate, or maybe somebody on your team can narrate the story. Find somebody that's willing to do that. But just remember that the human voice by itself brings authenticity to the story. And then you need a soundtrack. Sound is really important, not just your voice, but a soundtrack. One important aspect of filmmaking that I've learned throughout my career making films is that audiences will forgive poor pictures. There are a lot of films, for example, even in high blockbuster films, that have out of focus, for example, shots. The audience will forgive those, but they will never forgive you for poor sound. It's an interesting concept, actually. And you can see yourself doing that too. When you're watching something, you won't really care that if it's shaky or out of focus. Sometimes even stylistically that's welcome. But poor sound, no. You can't sit and watch a movie that just has bad sound. Sound can tell us about character. It tells us about place and time. You can use sound design a mood, a feeling. It informs and moves us in ways that visuals can't, because a certain combination of sounds and visuals can evoke what neither can do alone. So it's sound and pictures. Maybe you can see, for example, a photo of a boat arriving, let's say on the island, and then instead of seeing just a picture of the boat and then the sound of the water in the background, and that can evoke a lot of emotion. Music adds another layer of meaning to the story. But just remember, the music is not meant to distract, take you away from the story, but to complement it. So, if you're narrating, if you want to narrate this digital story of yours, avoid using musical vocal tracks. Just use music that doesn't have vocal tracks. Pacing. So, the story has to have a certain rhythm. It has visual rhythm. So that's how you influence that into cutting. So it can move fast, move slow. You decide what the pacing should be, but you should decide all of these elements in advance. So I'm telling you all of these elements because I would like you to think about them in advance before you make your digital story. So don't think of them at the last minute. Like, what is the pacing like? Do I want to tell something that's more moody, slow, and just let the audience sort of feel it? So we need to absorb and process information. And that's why the pacing is important. Whatever you're trying to say, don't go too fast. You can use blank space, for example, for dramatic effect. If something fades to black, you can use that for dramatic effect. You can change the pace by how long images stay on the screen. So if you want to keep an image quickly, or if you want to intercut quickly on images, to have a quick sequence of images, that gives you a very different feeling than if you kept one image on the screen for a very long time, forcing people to look at that. And then just remember that when you change the pace meaning of the story. And then lastly, economy. So, particularly in digital story, you have to be very economical. So you have to make tough choices. Do not overload your audience with information. If a picture tells 1,000 words, then a few images or shots can save you at least a few hundred. You do not have to be literal with every image. So, for example, if you're saying, if you're telling a story about, electricity, more, you don't have to go like, electricity is bad, the electricity. Or, people don't have enough food, and then you see food. And the type of food that lack of food. You don't have to be literal every time. Actually, you can show something that means completely something else. But it's the juxtaposition of the layering of meaning that gives the emotion. So that's the art of storytelling. Be able to layer meaning on top of things, not just be literal all the time. Show, do not tell. Don't say it verbally. If the image says it for you, let the image do the talking. You also don't need to show the image if the words are conveying the meaning well. You have a little bit of text, enough text for people to read. You don't have to then give us images after that. Just tell us again what you just said in the text. Let the text work, and let the image do its own thing. Don't overlap them. Don't repeat yourself too much. So those are the 7 principles of storytelling: economy, spacing, soundtrack, voice. So we want to hear your voice, or at least somebody on your team. We want you to have a killer soundtrack, convey meaning and emotional content. Make me feel something. Make your audience feel something. If you want them to be inspired, inspire them. If you want them to be afraid, frighten them. If you want them to be sad, show them something that makes them sad. It's emotional content is the currency of storytelling. Dramatic question. You have to have a central question that your 5-minute, 4-minute piece is trying to answer. And it's important that you as a team decide, what is the central question of this story that we're telling? What are we trying to answer? And then a point of view. It has to have a point of view. It can have multiple points of view, like 1 or 2 people telling the story from different points of view. That's kind of an interesting way to tell a story too. But there are stories that have no point of view, and then those don't have. It feels like they're all over the place. They don't have any direction. Like that's not a story. That's a news report. But even news reports, good news reports, have a strong, singular point of view. Somebody, a reporter, is telling the story, and they're telling it through their experience and their. I don't know if you've watched reporters in the field, and they take you out of the studio into the field, and they say, "I'm here. This is happening now. The tornado is moving towards the beach, as you can see." And then the tornado comes, and they're experiencing the story they're telling the story from their point of view. You need to tell your story from your point of view. Okay? That's about it.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So, Daniel will be available for your questions. So if you have any question regarding the project and regarding the specific refugee challenge, he will be happy to provide you answer. And if you can maybe have 2-3 pages, write down the specific information for the challenge of emergency evacuation in a refugee camp, and we will then post this material online for you to reference to, okay? So now I have less than 30 minutes. Let me continue what I have prepared for tonight here, okay. Now, this is the module. Now, there are 2 things we still have to do, but because we only have less than 30 minutes, we probably can only do one thing. One thing I want to do is to give you a quick summary of what you have been studying of the internet impact on innovation. And the second thing normally we do in a class is I will give you the exercise, and you will then talk to your teammate, group mates, and then answer the question. And today I actually prepared 3 different exercises, but obviously we will not have much time to do that. But let me very quickly go through a quick summary of the internet impact. Now, this also serves as a roadmap for you to understand all the things you have learned so far. So you have to first understand that so far we've been talking about a innovation landscape, which is based on the fact that we have a very large production capacity. Whatever you want to make, there's always make it in large scale. The more you make, the cheaper it becomes. So the number 1 is mass production. The second one is the endless consumption. And this is very evident in the recent market. And people always believe that as long as you make it, people will buy it. As long as you make it cheap, people will buy more. So many times we go to shopping, it's not because we have any needs. We actually end up carrying a lot of things back. It's not because the needs. is because a lot of different emotional reasons. So this really creates an endless consumption culture. And then the last one is the never-ending open competition. And we have been talking about this. Now, with this assumption, what you have is you have different innovation model. The first kind that you have studied is called continuous innovation. This is where you follow the same market and you try to gradually improve the performance of your offer. Thank you. You try to improve the performance of your offer and try to lower the price of your offer. This is called continuous innovation that we have studied. We also study discontinuous innovation. This is when you stick with one market, but you try to find different and much better technology to make the offer. So the discontinuous innovation will very rapidly replace the previous offer. The next one is a breakthrough innovation where you discover a complete new market. And the breakthrough innovation allows you to create a different and new kind of S-curve. So those are the three things that we have been talking about before we start to talk about Internet. Now, Internet has certainly created a lot of success in recent years. But as people look back, the reason for their success, there are basically two things. One is called disruptive innovation. Now here, I specifically put disruptive innovation at the first half of the mainstream market. I want you to pay attention to the location. In other words, disruptive innovation most likely will occur when the mainstream market already established. In other words, there's one set of dominant design has already been established by someone else. So now let me explain to you what happened in the disruptive innovation. Because whenever the market leader establish a set of dominant design, the market start to expand, and they tend to become very busy to satisfy this expanding market. But on the big market, there are always few customers who have one or two special additional functional requirements. But they are not part of the dominant design. In this case, the market leader will not spend resources to satisfy this additional requirement because they are so busy with the major market based on the dominant design they have created. Now, this opportunity become a good opportunity for the newcomer coming. The newcomer will focusing on satisfy those one or two additional functional requirements. For the rest of the dominant design, they can simply use the existing offer, right? So they provide additional offer, not only satisfy the current dominant design, but has a one or two added feature. Now, because Internet, it can happen so fast. The speed of change is so fast, so that the newcomer can come in with this additional offer all the way from the low-end market to the middle-end market to the high-end market. So the way disruptive innovation happens is actually very similar to what you learn from the segment zero principle, starting from low-end market and gradually improve, and eventually take over the mainstream market. Now, what happens is once you have disrupted the market, you basically have a new set of dominant design that replace the previous set of dominant design. And this new set will have one or two additional feature on top of the previous set. And the reason that happened and happened a lot in Internet is because the speed of Internet that allowed this change from low end to middle end to high end happen very quickly. So this is one type of innovation. The second type is the platform innovation. Excuse me. Why this thing is moving itself. Okay. So the next one is called platform innovation. Now, I want you to pay attention to where I put a platform innovation. It is always toward the second half of the mainstream market, particularly right before the commoditization. The reason for that is platform innovation that basically needs someone to offer a platform that has some service on top. For example, Amazon first created e-commerce platform, and the service and the product they provide this platform is books. They sell books, right? Now, when you first create a platform, you want to make sure you put effort on the platform rather than the product. So you want to use the simplest product you can find out, which are commodity. That is why Amazon was very smart to begin by selling books. Now, imagine if Amazon started by selling fresh seafood. That would be a very difficult thing, right? So Amazon was very careful in choosing a existing commodity, which is book. And then they can develop a very sophisticated platform and then use that platform to start selling something else. Another reason for platform innovation to happen over that point is in order to become a platform, you need to have enough traffic, enough user. So it is right near the commoditization stage where the market has become enough, the volume of traffic becomes significant. And then you create a platform. For example, you sell books, and people go through your platform. At the beginning, they try to buy books, but then the real benefit is they create a digital footprint. They become a traffic, and then the platform owner, like Amazon, they will then be able to collect the data and then use the data to create another new business. So they become a platform innovator. Same thing happened with Facebook. Same thing happened with Google. Same thing happened with Apple. So now if you look at all these internet leading companies, they all come from different business. For example, Amazon is in e-commerce. Facebook is in social networking. Google is in search. But now, you know what? Even though they started from different angles, they all now wanted to become a platform player. Because once they become platform player, they are holding the whole landscape. So you see, doesn't matter your Amazon, your Apple, your Google, your Microsoft, your Facebook, everyone wanted to be a platform player and play big data. That is really how the future will become, okay? So I want you to remember all this different kind of innovation and particularly pay attention to the platform innovation and disruptive innovation. And the key lesson here is internet provides you very high speed of change and very large scope of reach. So you can reach very far away. And the speed of change enable you to do disruptive innovation, and the large scope, a large amount of traffic allowed you to do platform innovation. So this is really the impact of internet. So this sounds good. That it seems that internet has created a lot of new opportunity for us. Indeed, it has created a lot of new business. People become very rich because of internet innovation. But next, I want to show you internet has also created a lot of challenge. It also created a lot of problem for us. And that's why this is the basis for people to think about the next industrial revolution. So here, I want to give you a big picture. I want you to look over what happened over the past several decades, right? So starting all the way from 17th century, if you look at the demand, the social demand, we always have different demand level of demand, and the demand will grow, increase smoothly. But if you look at supply means what we can do with technology. Before we have the first industrial revolution, basically there's no industry, right? So the supply is very flat. And the first industrial revolution allowed us to use machine power to replace animal power, right? So we can see the supply increases, but you can tell at this time we are still under supply. There's still a lot of demand in society. So the more you can supply, the better it comes. Then comes to the second revolution. If you remember, the second revolution has two things. One is electricity. The other one is mass production. Why electricity matters? because before the electricity, all the factories are built near the river, right? Because we need power, we need hydropower. Now you have electricity, suddenly all the factory can be anywhere as long as your electricity can reach. The second thing is even more important, that is mass production. This is invented by Henry Ford. He started to do mass production and using the scale to try to play the scale, economics of scale, right? So that's really the second revolution. Now, about half century later comes the third revolution. The third revolution is called digital revolution, where you start to have semiconductor instead of vacuum tube, and you start to have a computer, which then become a very powerful tool to automate your mass production. So you can see productivity increase a lot. And so the impact of digital revolution at the beginning is you create a lot of electronics products, which didn't exist before. Before the third revolution is all mechanical product, right? And the next one is you create computer, which can become a powerful tool for automation. And that's why the supply increased a lot. Now, there's another thing happen during the digital revolution, which is the next one, that is the appearance of internet. So internet have several effects. One is the scope. It can connect the whole world, the high connectivity. The other one is the speed of change. The speed of change become very fast. So it further increased the supply. By this time, you can tell we are entering a very different world where we, in terms of what technology can do, we can actually see the oversupply situation. Now, if you remember that whenever you see a market in an oversupply situation, something very fundamental must occur because the market cannot sustain itself. If you look at civilization, if you look at humanity, this is what we are facing right now. That is the reason people start to think about another industrial revolution and try to change the foundation of what we've been doing this, okay? So this is really the challenge of internet. Now, if you look at before the first revolution, we have agricultural economy. After that, we have industrial economy. And then after the second revolution, we have the mass production economy. Now, it is after second revolution that the human civilization really improved a lot. Our living standard improved, and the economic development around the world. But then it's continued into the third revolution, which now we start to penetrate into the next virtual world. Now, this is the preparation for the next slide, because I'm going to explain to you the impact of internet. Not only has a high speed and high scope, more importantly, it creates a completely virtual world, which is coexists with the real world, but does not play the same rule as the real world. For example, if you simply compare the company like Google, Google is a company that play and exists in the virtual world. Compare with another company called General Motors. General Motors is a leader in the physical world, right? General Motors existed for over 100 years. Google only existed about 20 years. Today, if you compare the market cap of Google, it is about 100 times more than General Motors. Then if you compare the number of people working at General Motors, it is 100 times more than the people working in Google. How could that happen? This doesn't make sense. Well, the only way it makes sense is because these two companies actually they exist in the two different worlds. One is called the physical world. The other one is called the virtual world. Same thing happened with Facebook. If you look at Facebook, it doesn't do any real thing. It simply connects people through software application. It's all in the virtual world. Yet it becomes such a dominant force in our society. And the people who develop Facebook become so rich. So this is really something now people start to realize that we are now currently living in two parallel worlds. One is called a physical world. which we all live in. The other one is called virtual world. When you turn on your cell phone, you log in your Facebook account, you are in the virtual world. In the virtual world, you can do a lot of things there. You can be as rude as you want. You can do cyberbully, whatever you want. But this is a different world than the real world. And let me just tell you, for example, if you just look at what happened in the real world, the automotive was invented 100 years ago. By the time we invent car, to the time when everybody can drive a car on the street, it took 100 years. What happened these 100 years? We have a traffic law. We have a traffic light. People know how to drive. Therefore, everybody can now drive the car without harming other people. If you look at what happened in internet, it's almost like everybody now is given a high-speed car, but nobody has driver license. Nobody require any driving school. There's no traffic light. Just do whatever you want to do as long as you're creative. That is why now we are ending up with a lot of chaotic situation in the market. And that is why now if you look at a lot of news in U.S. now, not only the market responded, but also even the legislation, the Congress, the Senate start to really pay attention to the company like Facebook. Because what? Because they suddenly create a world called virtual world where there's no rule. We don't even know how to govern these things. So that people started to behave very differently. The wealth created very differently. All this is the result of this internet revolution. And that is the background for us to anticipate the next industrial revolution. So I just want you to pay attention to two specific news here, okay? The first news, if you click this, you can tell last month, first time in the United States, the city of Los Angeles created a new office. This is the first ever in the U.S. The office is called Office of Emerging Technology. What does this office do? The office basically saying, if you want to create an app, a simple app, a code, a software, if this app will change people's social behavior, you must submit your app to this office to be reviewed before you can enter commercial phase. Now, if you look at this concept, it is very, very different from the open competition concept. Because now government started to realize that if we let all this kind of virtual application into our society, it ends up a very different kind of social problem which everybody have to pay for it. For example, Uber. We all know Uber not only create a big business, Uber actually changed a lot of traffic pattern, right? If you look at Airbnb also impact a lot of housing demand. So now, for example, imagine if this office existed 30 years ago, Zuckerberg must apply for a review before Facebook can be put in the commercial market. Now, you may question and say, well, is this going to hurt innovation or not? We don't know. But one thing is very clear is people start to realize that whatever you do in the virtual world, you must have a social responsibility. Otherwise, we see all this chaotic situation created in the virtual space, and that is why the government now are getting more and more aware and want to have more control. Now, the internet company are also aware of this, and they try to do a lot of self-regulation and try to change their policy. For example, Twitter recently just announced they are not going to accept any political advertisement, right? This is a part of big business for them, and the reason is they want to start to do self-regulation before the government come in and to really create more restriction. The second thing that I want you to look at the news is last week, Apple announced that Apple is the company that has the most cash in the world, right? Apple will give $2.5 billion to help solve the housing crisis in San Francisco. Why would Apple do that? Why would Apple do that? Now, Apple is not the only company. As a matter of fact, Google and Facebook each has already announced they're going to give away $1 billion each to help the housing crisis in San Francisco. What is the problem here? Well, the problem is those big internet companies now become the victim of their own success, right? They become so successful, although they can afford to pay people very high salary, people still cannot find houses in San Francisco. So you can tell the company itself started to realize that they have to change the way they conduct innovation. They have to change the way of thinking. They have to take more social responsibility, because if you don't do that, because the power and the speed of internet is so huge, very quickly you'll become the victim of your own success. And this is a very major trend now. I think you are living in a very interesting point because people started rethinking of this. Again, the hope is we can find a better way to combine the virtual world with the physical world. And that is why I won't skip this one, because this one is already, you already have this in the pre-study. So I want you to understand what happened is in the previous, before internet, everything happened in the physical world. So we can build innovation to satisfy needs, satisfy the wants, satisfy desire. What happened in the second revolution is the second revolution focusing on the physical world, right? And the third revolution focusing on the digital world and create a separate digital world. And now, as I said before, you have two inconsistent worlds coexist. And that's why you see all this kind of very strange things, very unclear regulation. And now what we're hoping is the next revolution, the fourth revolution. And the hope is the fourth revolution, we will then create a cyber-physical integrated world. Now, this is not just a dream, because there are a lot of companies already started to do this kind of product development where they have the physical product, and then they have a sensor with 5G networking. They can have exactly the digital twin of the physical product in the cyber product, so that the difference between cyberspace and virtual space become less, the whole thing become more integrated. So everything you do in the physical world will have the corresponding change in the cyber world and vice versa. Now, this sounds like a future dream. It is still the future, but there are 2 years ago, I spent a whole year on sabbatical working in Germany on this Industrial 4.0 example, and I clearly see many products already start to go into this direction. I hope that in the week number 13, where you have a lecture from Aachen faculty, and they can give you more example of this. Now, when I have a chance to talk to the NTU students later, I can also share with you more such example. What I'm telling you is this is a big, big change that can only be possible after the next revolution, okay? So let me very quickly, I think this will be the very last slide that I can show you, that every time you have a revolution, because revolution is not easy. Revolution actually is very painful, right? Someone will die, some company will disappear. So revolution doesn't happen easily, but once it happens, the whole production, consumption, distribution cycle completely change. So here, I don't have a chance for detailed explanation, but I want you to remember this table, go back to check yourself. Here I listed for the first revolution, and what will be the production model, what is the distribution model, what is the consumption model. I listed the same thing for the second revolution, different model. I listed the same thing for the third revolution. You see, all these things already happened. 1, 2, 3 revolution already happened. So those are the things you can go to check. Now, the next one is very interesting. The next one is the upcoming future. So the last column is still our projection. It's not happening yet. But if everything goes according to the plan, what you have is you have a highly integrated physical cyberspace, and all the consumption, all the production will be very different. Now, there are more material I put in the pre-study there. The important message I want you to take away is by the time you finish your study at school, this is the world you're entering. You are entering a industry, a workforce where the virtual and the physical thing should have no difference. That will completely change how you can innovate. So I want you to understand that will be your future workplace, and that's the focus you should focusing on. Now, I started the course by giving you a very big picture of innovation, the social technical cycle. Then we get into a lot of detail about different stage of what you need to do in the early market, middle market, and end market. I want to end the course, my part, also with this big picture so you understand the future is yet to come. And you understand where your role will be when you want to enter a innovation workspace in the future, okay? So, we're already over the time. I apologize for this. I have actually prepared several case studies which you can actually do at home. I strongly recommend you to log into this. Okay, I have prepared one case study. At least you should try this one. Now, we all know Amazon is very innovative. Amazon is a big, big company, right? The owner of Amazon is the richest man in the world. But have you realized that every year Amazon have to deal with the return product, and the return product costs Amazon $207 billion US. This is incredible. On internet purchase, 25% of Amazon purchase get returned. Actually, Amazon purposely did that because they promise you free return, right? They promise you 30 days free return. That's why you go for Amazon, right? And they are not stupid. They're not going to take you a free return and lose money, right? So I want you to go through this video. It's a very interesting video. You can click yourself and explain how Amazon actually can utilize this to create a more business. How did Amazon deal with the product return, which is the attraction for people to go to Amazon, and yet they make more money out of the product return? This is quite an impressive innovation example, and you can look at these things yourself, okay? So again, I wanted to conclude tonight's learning, and starting from next week, and you will enter different phase, and there will be different faculty in charge of your learning, but I will always be here to continue interacting with you and to help you to finish your team project, okay? So this will be the end of our tonight's class, and we'll see you next week. Bye. We didn't have a chance to do the grouping.